Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. This is Linn Cook with the California Mortgage Bankers Association. You've joined us for our special podcast on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a program that the California Mortgage Bankers Association has put together, and we are very pleased to have Paul Gigliotti with us. He is actually the leader of our DE&I committee here at the California Mortgage Bankers Association. If you don't know Paul, which you all should, he is the COO of Pinnacle Home Loans. He is also the CEO and co-founder of the Access Lending Academy, which is something all of you should really look up. And he is a California Mortgage Bankers Association board member. So we are very privileged to have you join us, Paul. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Lynn. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Paul for a long time. We've had this conversation a lot, and we meet, on a regular basis to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think you have a very unique perspective, as everybody does, but your sort of your journey through DE&I, right, is really interesting because we all know that we all have sort of these personal sort of connections or issues with DE&I, but the transition, right, of our own personal experience with DE&I into the workplace, right, is a very interesting story, and that's something we'd like to hear from you, Paul. Can you talk a little bit more about this sort of home work transition of your own DEI experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share the story. So first off, I'm going to start by saying, in this concept of transition between your personal life and your professional life, what I think is really important and where a lot of my passion lies in that concept is to be integrated, right, between your home and work life. And the reason why I think it's so important for that concept of integration is because it allows you to be 100% of who you are. It allows you to be extremely authentic or authentically aligned with who you are when you integrate who you are at home and who you are at work. You have to be cognizant, you can't have the same conversations that you have with a spouse that you have with maybe a manager. You can't have the same language and communication, but you should be who you are so your passions come through and your purpose comes through. And so my experience was really interesting to me, Lynn, and the reason why I have so much to talk about is it's something that's recently happened. It took me a while to understand who I was in my personal life. Even though I knew at the age of 16 that I was a gay male, it took me almost 15 years to be really comfortable with that because of the bullying and ridicule that I went through as a young kid, as a teenager. My parents, God bless them, and I love them absolutely, but I was sent to a shrink to ungay me for years because of this choice that I make, right? So it took me a long time to get comfortable with that and comfortable enough to meet my soulmate and get married to my husband and have two beautiful children and create this family. And so it's interesting if you sit back and think about that, Lynn, if you think about all the years of, I don't want to use the word repression, but all the years of being kind of placed in this box for being gay in my personal life, well, by proxy or just by happenstance, I carried that over into my professional life, right? And so when I would walk into a boardroom or when I would get up on stage, fear would grip me as an individual of being ridiculed again, right? Because that's what I went through in my personal life. So I all of a sudden would want to clam up and I wouldn't be able to speak my voice and I wouldn't be able to talk about concepts that I had. And I noticed that it was really hindering my ability to move forward in my professional life, my ability to share my ideas and my concepts of innovation or how to do things, because I all of a sudden became that little kid that was being made fun of for being gay, for being different.
So how did you do that? I mean, was it a mental sort of block that you were having that you were able to find a strategy to kind of overcome, or did you say, forget it, I'm just gonna be free and be who I am?
It was a sequence of events. That's a great question. And I will say, and this isn't necessarily a plug for Access Lending Academy, but creating this company, this nonprofit organization that's main purpose is to bridge the gap of DE&I in the workplace in the mortgage lending industry supported my growth, my personal growth. And it concentrates on supporting everybody's growth that's not only a student or a learner in Access Lending Academy, but everyone's involvement. And as I sat back and I would talk to our students about, you're going to be great at this. It doesn't matter if your ethnicity is different or if you have a different religious background or a different, socioeconomic makeup, you're going to be amazing at this. And we're going to be here to support you the whole time. I all of a sudden realized that I was actually speaking to myself as well. So it became this personal call to action. So it was a layer effect, right? So I had that. And then, very recently I was at a conference and I was about to get up on stage and talk to a group of people about Access Lending Academy and what it means to be a diverse individual in your professional life. And I started to get really jittery and bajiggity about being up in front of all these people. And a dear friend and mentor of me looked at me and said, "What's your problem? Everybody loves you. They want to hear from you. Just shut up, get up on stage and do your thing. You're here for a reason. Share your story. Go do it now." And kind of pushed me to realize that this is my purpose. And if it's my purpose, I got to do it 100%. So it was a multitude of being surrounded by an amazing network, and me just sitting back and Lynn realizing that if I trust and if I'm true to who I am, and I'm this individual that is so passionate about my family. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I talk about my kids and my husband constantly. I got to be true to that, right? I got to carry that over into my professional life and be that 100% authentic Paul Gigliotti.
Right. So, I mean, it's how does it feel now? I mean, I think that's really what people need to understand, that, when you're able to throw off, all these sort of anxieties or these hesitations that you may have about yourself because you're fearful of the way that the other people may see you. I mean, how does it feel getting over that? I mean, has that impacted the way that you have relationships with your colleagues? Your ability to do your work productively, effectively. What is the net impact of making that transition?
It's a completely different approach. It's almost it changes the trajectory of it changes the trajectory of my life. It allowed me to have, there are so many analogies that come to mind when you were asking that question. A veil was lifted. I felt like, maybe a great analogy is when you're driving a sports car and it needs a tune-up really badly, or one of the valves are clogged and you bring it to the mechanic and it gets fixed, and you're driving down the freeway and pop it into third gear and all of a sudden you can take off. It's liberating, it's freeing. I mean, even just having this conversation with you, I can talk about anything. I can say the word gay. I
Right.
can say I'm gay. I can say my husband, and feel really great about it because it doesn't matter, because it's me, and you're a friend of mine, and you should know that I'm gay or not. No, it's no big deal, but it just allows me to be 100% me, and people people deserve that, whether they like it or not. They deserve to see the full story, right? They deserve to see full transparency, and that's who I am. It doesn't necessarily make me, but it's part of my life. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think that's the key thing, not just about you or our own selves. I think one of the main things that we try to communicate here at the California MBA about DE&I is that it matters and it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's the main thing, that we're not trying to make this some sort of crusade necessarily, right? That we want people to feel free about, being able to, talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and not feel like they have a veil over them that people are judging because they're talking about it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, and Paul, really, thank you so much for sharing with us. I mean, this is a really meaningful conversation that we're having. And again, this is precisely, I think, what we're trying to communicate here at the California MBA about diversity, equity, inclusion. That, you know, it is something that's important, but it's not, right?
Exactly. I love that your statement that you made, Lynn. It's important because be who you are. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Just allow yourself to be, you know, truly authentic to who you are as a human, and then move on from it, you know?
Yes, I agree. So, well, thanks so much. I'm sorry we don't have much time on this podcast, but you know, obviously, you know, we'll be hearing from you more, Paul. You know, you are heading up our whole committee. You're a California Mortgage MBA board member. But thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all for joining us and watching this important podcast. We hope you join us for future podcasts. This is Linn Cook from the California MBA. Thanks again, folks.
Thanks, Lynn.